They have Duchenne.
Even though they have a disease that to you or me just would devastate us, they seem to live each day with so much emotion and so much spirit.
Even though he's 6, he just knows, I think, he just has this overall sense that he wants to make today count.
Sej is the most enthusiastic boy that I know. When he was 8, he said that if FDR can run the country in a wheelchair, who can stop me?
Just a mother knows when something's not quite right, and I always had that suspicion.
I started to see symptoms in Sej at a very young age, actually.
He was not even a year old, and we noticed some delay in his ability to sit up straight or crawl.
Actually, when the first 6 months of Dylan's life, I knew something wasn't quite right because he wasn't turning over.
The nurse suggested to Vicky, my wife, that we should have him checked out for muscular dystrophy.
Well, it was probably the hardest thing I ever had to hear. I mean, just the sound of a diagnosis like that about your child.
The moment I read the description of Duchenne and what the common symptoms are, trouble getting off the floor, enlarged calves, trouble going upstairs, I said, that's Dylan. I knew it.
It's absolutely the hardest thing in the world to think that, okay, my son was that 1 in 3,500 boys to get this.
Duchenne can happen to any family. The gene is the largest in the human genome and subject to random and frequent mutations. Therefore, any family can have a child with Duchenne.
I had never heard of it. You know, no one in my family ever had Duchenne. I never knew anyone with Duchenne.
Duchenne is a catastrophic diagnosis. It is 100% fatal.
It's because the children are missing a key protein that sort of stabilizes the structure of their muscle. And so their muscles become very fragile when the protein is called dystrophin. When this protein dystrophin is missing, their muscles are very easily damaged. You can imagine it's as if walking across the room for one of these Duchenne boys is tantamount to maybe running a few miles for you and me in terms of the amount of damage it does to their muscles.
So at the age of 7 years old, boys with Duchenne typically increase weakness. They lose the ability to walk. In their early teens, they lose the ability to move their arms. And they're most likely unable to move anything by the late teens.
So it was one thing to hear that Dylan was going to be in a wheelchair. It was a very different thing to find out that his heart was going to fail, his lungs are going to fail.
I mean, suddenly all the hopes and dreams and aspirations I had for my son were just shattered. I felt really hopeless.
Dylan says, Mom, I don't know what I'm going to be when I grow up. And I think, oh my God, neither do I. I don't even know if you are going to grow up, you know, and if you do, what kind of life are you going to have?
This was a doctor in the United States that said, listen, go home and love your son for as long as you have him. There's really nothing more we can do.
My biggest fear is that I will lose my son before we're able to get a therapy, before we're able to get a cure, before we're able to get even a cocktail of treatments. I'm afraid, you know, constantly of that thing behind me, and it's a big clock ticking, tick, 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 tick.
My children were diagnosed with Duchenne in 1984. They followed the normal clinical course, gaining skills and then losing all skills, going off their feet at 8 years old and dying at 15 and 17.
We didn't know enough about the whole disease progression when past boys were diagnosed. And so, you know, there really wasn't very much that could be offered to her.
There was no means to connect to other families. There was no investment in research in Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy in Washington, D.C. There was no good clinical care available in Duchenne.
When we first learned about this diagnosis, we didn't know which way was north. And PPMD was our compass.
Parent Project Muscular Dystrophy is a community of parents because parents will do anything to save their children.
I think of myself as a part of PPMD. It's a strategic coalition of the number of parents around the world who want to choose to get involved and join this race and fight to end Duchenne.
We accelerate research. We raise our voices in Washington. We demand that all young boys and men have access to optimal care. and we educate the global community about Duchenne.
So there's a lot more emphasis on research at the NIH and clinical trials, and even industry interest that I think all you can trace back to a lot of the grassroots efforts that Parent Project was really behind.
PPMD has seeded every single drug and every single strategy that is currently coming into trial. Our investments from 1994 on have seeded the therapies that we're seeing now in trial and in clinic today.
Duchenne today is not what it was 25 years ago or even 10 years ago. Our boys have a real shot at living a very good quality of life.
The difference between now and 20 years ago is that that death sentence isn't carried out at 12, 17, 20. We can live longer, stronger, better lives. And so I owe so much to the people who have come before me.
So we've had pretty major impact on the lives of the patients in terms of keeping them on their feet for a longer period of time and keeping them alive for a longer period of time. And so I think that's nothing compared to what we'll do over the next decade.
There are more experimental drugs now than ever before, but they're just slightly out of our grasp.
We've gone from, having no therapies to having, in some sense, an abundance of targets and possible therapeutics. It's an exciting time to be involved. At the same time, I'm frustrated, as the parents are, that it just can't happen so much faster once you know what to do.
Things are moving way too slowly.
All boys with Duchenne are in a race against the clock.
There's only one way out of this. We got to pool resources together. We've got to join hands to end Duchenne.
We have a chance to save this generation of boys.
I'm going to do every single thing in my power to change the predicted future of this disease.
I told Pat Furlong that when I first got into this, I would stay committed to this until we had real treatments for these boys, and that's my intention.
Let's do something about it, because something can be done about it.